Bruce with Briscoe and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be the WWE Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Briscoe. And what a wonderful guest we have today. One of the greatest stand-up comedians in the world. And he got the honor of roasting Bruce Pritchard. And I looked up how many movies he's been in. It's approximately 1 million. So he is Mr. Ron Funches. Ron, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be here with both of you. I looked up to both of you for so long, since you were both so much younger. Bradshaw, it feels like you are apparently going backwards in age. What is it? Just that golf and that Bermuda sun? Or you got that HGH running through you? What's going on?
All the above, yes. I used to always say, "What are you taking?" Yes.
Hey, Ron, it's great to have you on. We first met out in Chicago, I believe it was. That guy Bruce Pritchard out there, and cussing him up one side down the other. And I really enjoyed that. That was my first taste of getting to know real comedians like yourself and Taylor Williamson and Ron and all those guys, man. What a great time, man. I appreciate it. Then I had the pleasure of running into you in LA at the comedy club, right?
At the Comedy Store, yes, sir.
Comedy Store,
yes, sir. I really, the roast was the first time I met you, and I just really enjoyed working with you because a lot of the other wrestlers, they didn't really, I don't think they respected what we did as comedians, some of them, and you were very much interested in like what could be done to kind of help your jokes and make things better. And just working with you was so easy and fun. And you were, just genuinely hilarious just as a person. And so it was and before that, I was just terrified of you. So it was nice to see that side of you. Yeah, I still am.
Yeah, your buddy Taylor Williamson said I had a boring life. That was hard to write for it, that road.
I don't know if you have more than one. I don't know how many children you have, but I'm friends with one of your son at least, and he's the one. I think he works in botany, and he's just a really cool dude. I really enjoy him as well.
That's the young one. I got one in wrestling. That's West, and that young Joe. He's a landscape architect. But his main love is botany and plants. He got that from his mom. Mm-hmm. We got a few acres here in north of Tampa here, and he's turned it into him and my wife turned the damn thing into a botanical garden here. Now I'm going to watch where I step, and where I go to pee at night time. That's the important part. When I pee on a plant, man, I hear it all the time. It turns yellow right away. I don't know why.
You can't hide that evidence.
What are you doing peeing on a plant?
Well, John, I live out here in the country. Nobody's around, except the birds and the bees, So when I got nature called, I'm old. That's my excuse. So when nature called, man, I look around, make sure there's no possum or raccoon watching, because I don't want to get them jealous or anything. And I find me a plant and I relieve myself. And I get called out for it. I don't know how they find it. They must have some kind of detectors on those damn things.
Maybe because the plant dies.
That's usually that's usually it. Well, Ron, enough about my plants here. It's a little bit about your passion for wrestling and how you got that. You grew up where, between LA and Portland, somewhere in that area, or what?
I was born in LA, but I was actually raised in Chicago, and that probably had the most to with me becoming a wrestling fan at a young age. It's just Chicago was a hot. Used to be a hotbed for pro wrestling, and I grew up in a house. I was a single parent. My mom raised me, and she had her sister there, and my sister, and my cousin, and it was all girls. And the only kind of like boost of testosterone I would get as a little kid is that my uncle would take me out to the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago, and we'd go see house shows, and we'd go see Hulk. I remember seeing Hulk Hogan in Earthquake and Stretcher Match. I remember the first time I saw Coco Beware and Frankie, and just all these things that I was like, this is when I first saw the Ultimate Warrior, and just the tassels and the hair blowing, and I was like, this is something that I love, and it's been like that my whole life pretty much.
Well, from what you're describing, that had to be in the 70s. All those stars were running wild at that time, as Hawksher used to say. Who was your absolute favorite during that era? Was it Hawk, or was it Coco with Frankie, or what was
If you I think just like most kids, I was a Hulkamaniac. So Hulk Hogan would have been my end all be all. But right below him for me was Owen Hart. I always
it?
liked like Owen with Coco and High Energy, and then when he went off and did his own thing, and it's just something about him being like kind of brash and funny and very skilled at the same time. And it's not like I knew anything about like work rate or anything of that nature, but I just always was drawn to a smaller guy who could I think the Enziguri, just that move. I was like, wow, who couldn't do that? And it was I always loved Owen Hart.
Well, Owen Hart, he had to have sense of humor, and you're a comedian and all that stuff. That sense of humor. Owen was a notorious ribber. Did you have any of those traits as a comedian? Are you funny guys, natural ribbers is what I'm getting at?
Some people are, but I think I'm in a little bit of the other camp where I was a shy guy, right? So my comedy was more like deflection and me getting out of bad situations, and the fact that I like kind of grew up in a little bit of an unstable household. So I was mostly shy. I didn't really like rib people or pick on people or do anything like that. I was the one getting picked on, and I was using comedy to get out of it. Like if I could make them laugh, they would forget that they're about to beat me up,
Yeah, we know you went on a super diet, man. You lost tons of weight, man, and congratulations. That's not an easy gig to do, man. You lose all that weight. Were you a heavy kid? Was that part of the ribbon when you were young? Or?
Oh yes, sir. I was a husky child. Yes,
husky, I was. All right.
Husky is the word. Husky is the word.
I think JBL was along those lines too when he was young.
I was husky.
Oh yeah, we were shopping in the same department. It was, and I was active. We would do these things, but I don't think I had to learn more about health as I got older. Like my mom would try to get me into healthier activities, but it'd be like, let's go walk for a half a mile and then go to Burger King. So it was always undoing anything that we did. And I would go to karate class and then come home and eat a whole box of cookies, so.
Were you a big karate guy?
Oh yeah, I grew up in the I was born in '83, so like it was all Karate Kid, it was all Three Ninjas, it was a big karate time period. I still have my jaws a little loose from a roundhouse kick that I took from a friend of mine, and I never told my mom because I didn't want to get him in trouble. I needed to go to the doctor.
So when you later did like the pro wrestling training, you'd already done a lot of martial arts training before.
I wouldn't necessarily say. My martial arts training was like at 7, 8 years old, so it wasn't something. It wasn't strenuous. It wasn't high impact for me. Actually, when I went to pro wrestling school and I went to the Santino Brothers Academy, and then I also went to some classes taught by Shane Hayes, who was Slapjack in WWE, and the Santino Brothers one was definitely it was the first time where I was like, oh, I feel like if I had played football in high school, if I had went to a college team, like this is first time I was taught to like, you come in and you shake everybody's hand and you introduce yourself when you walk in a room. These are qualities that I now take. Like if I have a pitch meeting, if I have a place where I'm going to go network with people, I take those things because again, I'm a very shy person, but now I go, hey, just go in, shake their hand, look them in the eye and introduce yourself. And that was actually very life-changing for me.
That's such a wonderful tradition. It's one of the things, the old wrestlers always do. And it's something I still do as well. Walk into a room full of people that, I've always go around, shake everybody's hand and say hello. Not even not in a wrestling dressing room, but anywhere. It's just kind of a neat thing that is a great tradition that wrestling is passed down from one generation to the next.
No, absolutely. And it's something that I think as a society, we used to be a lot bigger on, and now it's much more rare. So I love bringing that back.
Did you guys have that too, where you go in on there, because when I was at the comedy club there in LA, there was a lot of you guys backstage, and a lot of you guys were coming in and going out and all that stuff. So
no, it's a more of a solo experience, solo sport. We all kind of know each other a little bit, but I would say, and I don't know, maybe wrestling is like this. You guys would have to tell me more than I would know. But a lot of times with comedy, they don't want to talk to you until they know you're going to be here for a little bit. So.
That's same with wrestling, man. You size somebody up, what is he going to be? Is he going to be putting food on the table?
Hey, Ron, I played pro football for a few years, and whenever the coach would call you by your number, you knew you were in trouble. they didn't want to learn your name, so they didn't mind cutting you. So if they were saying like, hey, 61, you're going, uh-oh, I'm on the bubble.
Gorilla Monsoon used to have a favorite saying, we'd get a new guy in, it would everybody, and Gorilla, had that ability to size somebody up because he'd been in the business so long and tell, and if Monsoon didn't like it, hey, what's it? Don't commit his name to memory. You don't have to commit his name to memory. So, in other words, he ain't gonna be here long.
I love that, and it's true. It's all, but it seems harsh, but that's what any type of successful endeavor is, right? That's something I always try to tell myself and remember, that this isn't something that's promised to anyone. This isn't something where it isn't like we all hang out together, so we all end up making it. It's like if you don't put the effort out, if you're not bringing something new, if you don't have a business mind as well as being funny in a unique way, like you might have a long haul ahead of you. So this comedy, is just like wrestling, doesn't owe you anything.
Owen has a pretty cool history. With Coco. It's funny because in wrestling history, you always had groups together. So you had Cowboys together, you had Natives together, you had Samoans together, you had Blacks together, you had Mexicans together. Everybody was together. Very few were integrated. And so Gerald Briscoe and Thunderbolt Patterson were one of the first. Coco and Owen were one of the first as well. Me and Ron were one of the first as well. So it's you're dealing with a couple of guys who have something in common with that. It's just something that had never been done. For some reason, everybody got put together. If you have Italians come into a company, the Italians are all in a group. It's funny how it's changed over the years, but back then it was different to have that.
Well, I tell you, that's one of the things that I really respected about the tag team of you and Ron, is that none of it was ever race-based, right? It was always like two ass kickers who just like to drink beer together and hang out and enjoy each other's company. And without really saying anything or doing anything, that's such a positive and progressive thing for young Black kids to see, or for anyone to see, that it's like, it doesn't have to be this type of like super like affirmative action type deal. It just has to be like, look at this motherfucker, look at this guy. They're both big badass dudes. Put them together and they kick ass.
And Ron wouldn't. Ray wanted to make it about race at one point, and Ron wouldn't let him. And I completely agreed. He goes, if you make it about that, it becomes about that. He goes, it's better. We're just friends. He goes, that's all it is. And I always thought that was the right way to approach it.
I agree.
Nowadays, when they want to get me to come to an autograph convention, I hate traveling, and they'll say, "Ron's here." All right. Okay. All right. You win. All right.
Oh. There's few things that together either one of us out of our home there, and Ron Simmons is truly one of them, because I've been called on to do a couple of them. I'm just like, Donald, who's going to be there? Who am I going to be with? Well, they'll just go naming off several guys. Ron Simmons. I said, okay, I'll come if my table's right next to Ron Simmons. I know I can rib him about football and Florida State all night long.
Oh man, he's truly one of the few people, which is so funny. My wife always laughs about this, because like I work around a lot of different people, and I don't know celebrities. I don't know, like I'll work with like big name people, and I'll be like, she's a nice lady. But like I met Ron Simmons, and it was one of the most tongue-tied, starstruck experiences of my entire life, because that guy just meant so much to me. Just and especially when I grew up as a kid, either all the Black characters were flamboyant and happy like Coco Beware, which is fine, or they were like very savage and menacing, and which was not as fine to me. But to have Ron Simmons just be this badass and be this ultimate dude, and when he won the WCW title, it is. I tell people, I'm like, that's a underrated moment in like Black history that means a lot more than people give it credit for.
Yeah, I agree. When I did his Hall of Fame induction, as his friend, and I remember right before I walked out, I thought, you know what, this is our Jackie Robinson, and I started getting nervous about it, because I thought I'm not just living up to Ron, I've got to live up to the history of what Ron represented, and to me that's always so cool. And Ron has carried himself so well. Ron, he'll tell you some guys don't want to be role models. I don't mind being a role model. And that's Ron. He's just a different guy, man. He's the right guy to break a barrier. You have to be better than what's on the other side of that barrier. You can't be equal, and that's why Jackie was the right guy. That's why so many different guys. Ron was the right guy. Those are impressive guys that break barriers.
Absolutely.
Were you always like when you were in high school? Did you always want to be a stand-up comedian?
Oh, I wanted to be a stand-up comedian since I was 5 years old. Yeah, for sure.
Really?
I love comedy. Like when other kids are watching cartoons and going outside and playing ball, I'm watching like I Love Lucy, Green Acres. I'm watching all these like sitcoms from the 50s and 60s, and it just kind of grew my love of comedy. And then from my love of comedy, my mom kind of introduced me to stand up by taking me to different concerts, and I would see these opening acts. And then growing up in Chicago, you see people like Bernie Mac very early, and I would always we would rent these VHS tapes from this place called Hollywood Video in Chicago, and I get to rent a tape, my sister would rent a tape, and my mom would rent a tape, and I would always alternate between a wrestling tape or a stand-up one. And that's what I would always pick. If they had a new stand-up one I haven't seen, I'd watch some Chris Rock tape or some older Richard Pryor tape or Red Fox, or if they had some WCW Super Brawl thing I haven't seen or World's Wildest Matches, then I would get that. I would live those be the, and to this day, I'm going to be 40 next year. To this day, most of my entertainment is either watching comedy or pro wrestling.
Here's a little gift-giving whistling from Omaha Steaks. Dads want steaks. And with Father's Day around the corner, there isn't a better gift than Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com, type JBLGB in the search bar, and order the Dads Want Steaks package for just $99. This limited time package includes 16 mouth-watering entrees, guaranteed to love, like smoky, tender, bacon-wrapped filet mignon, gourmet jumbo franks, and their air-chilled boneless chicken breasts. And for a sweet finish, delicious caramel apple tartlets. I'm getting hungry just thinking about them. And as a special gift for my listeners, when you type JBLGB in the search bar and order the Dads Want Steaks package, you also get 8 free Omaha Steak burgers. These burgers are full of bold, beefy flavor made from 100% Omaha steaks, and now they're bigger than ever at a whopping 6 ounces. Don't wait. Send Dad more than just a gift. Send him an experience he'll love and can share with you. Go to omahasteaks.com and type JBLGB in the search bar and order the Dads Want Steaks package. You'll get 16 entrees and 4 desserts plus 8 free Omaha Steak burgers. Omaha Steaks. It just isn't steak. It's the best steak of your life, guaranteed. That's omahasteaks.com, keyword JBLGB.
Who was that comedian, Ron, that flipped that switch and say, man, this is it. This is where I want to
be? Comedian wise, it was 2 people. It's Dave Chappelle and Mitch Hedberg for me when I was watching, and this is, older. So this is like Dave when he was pretty young, and he was doing this special called Killing Them Softly. And it was the first time that I saw a Black comedian who was kind of like me, who was kind of nerdy, kind of soft-spoken, and would go off on these like tangents. And before that, like they were always very talented comedians of color that I enjoyed, but I never saw myself. I never saw myself in like a Richard Pryor or Eddie Murphy, because they were very like smooth, very fast talking, could get the girls. That wasn't my history. So to have someone that was more like nerdy and someone I could look up to, him and then Mitch Hedberg. Those were the two where I was like, if they can do this, I can do it. And to bring it back to wrestling and comedy to kind of match them together, I had already started stand-up. I was doing open mics at this time, and I would work with all these headliners, and either they were bad and just not very artistic, or they were very egotistical. And again, I wasn't seeing myself in these headliners, and I was like, oh, maybe this isn't the job for me. And then my friend who passed away a few years ago, he actually got a gig opening for Roddy Piper. And when I saw Roddy doing his stand-up and telling his stories, and then even more, I got to go backstage and I talked to him about how I was a fan of his and how much I liked wrestling. And I stand up, and then his just the way he was soft-spoken, and he just talked about how much he loved the craft and how much he loved art. Now it was when I met Roddy Piper, it was the first time I go, oh, there are celebrities that are like me. And I don't have to be like some fur coat wearing, shirtless, six-pack ab dude to be a celebrity. You can be nice, you can be sweet, you can be soft-spoken. You just have to be good at your job. And Roddy Piper was the first person that really taught me that.
I think that's the first time Roddy Piper's ever been described as sweet and soft-spoken.
Well, he was older. He was
older. That's how he was older. I love it. that edge done wore off at Roddy's ass.
How was Roddy? Because Roddy was really good friends with me and Jerry, and we both loved him. How was Roddy as a comedian? From a comedian who would analyze him, how was Roddy as a stand-up?
Roddy was good in the fact that, well, here's what I love about with any actual like good wrestling stand-up. I probably put Roddy and Mick Foley in the same regard, in that they know what they're good at and they know what the people want from them, and then they find like more inventive and fun ways to give them that. It's not like he was like, here's my, he wasn't coming out there being Jerry Seinfeld. He was telling stories about his life, telling stories about wrestling, but then he would go into just like some slice of life stuff, and you're like, oh, he's taking this seriously. He takes this as serious as I do, and that's all I ever care about. I don't really, good or bad is so subjective and so temporary in my business. Somebody's horrible, and then 6 months later they're great. So I just mostly care about, do you care about this? Do you actually give a crap about the craft of it? And Roddy certainly did.
Ronnie, that's hearing you describe it is really the same feeling that John and I and a lot of our cohorts have when not comedian, but entertainers come into our business. It's not whether they're good or bad. It's the respect that they have coming in. We've seen some big stars come in that had no respect at all, and they're right out. They're not. We've had these other guys that, Bad Bunny and Logan Paul and some, and McAfee and these guys come in. They respect our business so much, and they work so hard at refining this craft too. That's similar like what you were saying about Hot Rod. I know there's Hot Rod or Lord Steven Regal and Mick Foley, and a lot of these guys that do what you do, and they truly have a passion for the comedy sense of entertainment too. So that's good to hear that you guys kind of judge, the effort, the passion that people have when they get in your business.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what I try to do with anything that I go into, whether it was like when I made a transition from just being stand-up into acting, because I didn't like it when I see these actors and they show up at the same shows I'm at, and they're like, oh, my manager told me I should be a stand-up because that might help me right now. And it's like, well, I've been doing this for 15 years. I used to sleep in my car to do this. So let me tell you, your manager's wrong.
There's two things that everybody thinks they could do in this world. One, be a wrestler, and the other, be a comedian.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I see so many similarities for sure between the two. Because it's the same thing. It takes a big craftsmanship. People who are great at either tend to be able to pick up other skills, right? People who are great pro wrestlers can become great can get into music, can get into other things, but it's almost impossible for people to go the other way. You have so many more examples of people who can pick up that live, because I mean, at the end of the day, right? That's what we're talking about: live performing, being able to manipulate an audience, being able to make people go one way and then trick them to go another way. Those things are similar whether you're doing stand-up or doing comedy or doing pro wrestling. It's just I'm usually just always going for laughs. And it was actually the first time when I did the match where I go like, oh man, it's fun to make people concerned. I never knew that. I just thought laughter was the best. But when I got hit and I go down and I hear people go, oh, I was like, oh, okay.
This is what it's about. Yeah. That's where those hairs stand up on the arm and it gets you addicted, like drug going through you.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
I always said when somebody asked me to explain wrestling, I always explain to them it's like two ad-lib comedians. You get up there and you have an idea of where you want to go, but you got to read the crowd. And if the crowd doesn't like it, you go somewhere else. And that's, to me, the best way to explain it is from ad-lib comedians. So if you're an ad-lib comedian, you're standing up there with a live mic, brother, you're naked in front of the world. You know this better than we do. I mean, it's you sink or swim out there. Same in wrestling. When you get out there and you got 30 minutes and people expect something out of you and they don't buy something initially, you have to change. Then you change again. You finally figure out what they're buying, and every crowd's different. Cleveland to Detroit's different. Cleveland in the afternoon is different than Cleveland at night.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I know, it's just interesting. If you can do that, like you say, you can transfer that to almost anywhere in the world.
Yeah, no, and they're both to me, they're both the building blocks of entertainment. They're both the most purest form, because, and I don't want to generalize or dismiss what you guys do at all, but it was when I was in class when I was like, oh, I'm starting to get it. It's like, it's actual grappling plus some gymnastics plus acting. It's like, it's all the basic skills of performing all together in pro. And that's why I never understand when people are so dismissive of it, just like they can be of stand-up, right? Where they're like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. It's like, when you look at it, it's so hard. How can you do all those things live,
Right, with no safety net, just like a stand-up comedian. Yeah, I love the skit you did. I was renting some bunch of your videos before you came on is wrestling fake? And your answer was, thank God it is. We got a guy with a snake in a bag. I mean, it's thank goodness that he's in on it. The snake may not be.
Yeah. I just could never. To me, that when someone, because I'd bring ladies over on dates or invite them to shows, and it was always, to me, the mark of like someone who wasn't with it. It wasn't where they'd be like, well, how could you like it? It's fake. And it's like, how could you? How do you watch anything if that's your attitude?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those things that all you got to do. Are people entertained? And that's all it boils down to. If people are entertained, then nothing else matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love, I love bringing new people into it. I'm getting my wife into it. My son. It's nice when you can introduce people who come in with a dismissive attitude, and then they see the same magic that you do in it. I love that. Whether it's stand-up.
Your first wrestling match, you end up going forever. I was watching it today. I mean, that was a long match, and you threw the arm drags at the beginning. I know we asked you before we were on official live record here, but was that a Jack Briscoe arm drag or a Ricky Steamboat arm drag?
Oh, it's always a Steamboat arm drag. I definitely always.
Thank goodness, because Jack would be upset in his grave if you said that as a Jack Briscoe arm drag.
Yeah, I know. They wouldn't have executed them properly.
Jerry freezes up on us. Don't worry. It's just because he's old. It has nothing to do with his wife.
As long as I come back, man, that's all that matters.
Jerry's 150. And I hate to tell you this, Ron, but he actually died like 20 years ago. He just won't check. He's just too tough and stubborn to check into the cemetery.
Oh, and in that case, you look good.
Yeah. Ron,
I
when he had
thought
a
you
heart
looked like
attack-
shit, but if you had died already, you look
Oh,
like
he's been dead for years. Yeah. He just won't check in.
They just prop me up in this chair and turn the internet on when it works, you know.
Hey, Ron, when he had a heart attack, I called his wife to check on him, and I said, "How's Jerry doing?" She goes, "Oh my goodness!" And he's slurring his words. He doesn't know where he is. I said, "That's Friday."
Yeah, those are the friends I had. Ron, how did you decide that you're going to get involved in this wrestling out there, and walk us through the school and the guys that helped you and did a great job of helping you prepare to get in the ring?
Oh, absolutely. Basically, I had started to do well in stand-up comedy. And what the big issue that happened is that I had a friend of mine suddenly pass away. And I think like for a lot of people that happens to you, it's the first time you really start going like, oh, wait, I'm an adult. I could die at any time. I want to go, maybe there's some things I still want to do and I want to accomplish. And for me, like I said, I either wanted it my whole life. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian or I wanted to be a pro wrestler. Those are only two interests that I had. And I was like, stand-up's going well. I'm not getting any younger. Let me see about pro wrestling. So I went to class at the Santino Brothers Academy. Some wonderful people, wonderful teachers there at the time. Brody King, who's now at AEW, he was one of my instructors. Jake, I believe his name was Jake Atlas in WWE. He was one of the instructors there as well. As was Heather Monroe, and they really drilled in the like craftsmanship of it and the fact that we had to do. It was very, what I imagine is, I don't know what is old school, but it felt old school to me. It was lots of squats, lots of push-ups, lots of sit-ups, a whole hour of wearing you down before you ever even like did any rolls or tucks or bumps or any of that nature. And so I vomited a fair amount of times. But I learned about myself, and I was learning that I can push myself. And like you said, Mr. Briscoe, I had lost a bunch of weight, and I really wanted to learn what my body was capable of. I wasn't really aware. I still had the same mindset as if I was 350, 360 pounds. And so I was like, let me see what I can actually do. And I went to class for a few months, but stand-up started picking back up for me. And I didn't know how much I was affecting my other classmates when I would miss a class and then they'd go to pair off and I wasn't there for a week, So I dropped out of that class for a while, just to respect other people's time. And then it was actually Shane Hayes, the old slapjack, who reached out to me and was like, hey, I saw you training, I saw you stop. And I was like, yeah, I couldn't go with this regimented program. And he was like, hey, I have a group of people who are not wrestlers. They're comedians and actors and other things. If you just want to come by and just practice for a while, come on by. And that kind of reignited my love of it, because I was like, oh, I'm not myself every time, which would be fine if I actually wanted to do the job. But I was like, I'm not going to really become a wrestler. Not happening. I'm not starting over. I'm already making too much money in comedy to start over for wrestling money. So it was just doing it for fun. And I got the chance to do the match. I've been going to a bunch of GCW events. And when I told them I was training, and they have Tony Depp in there, who's a very safe and good to work with. And, because they got some people over there that will kill you with and I don't want to get in the ring with them. But Tony was nice and safe and wonderful, and also slapped the shit out of me, because I think he wanted to make sure that I wanted to do it. And so, but we had a great time. One of the best experiences of my entire life.
Are you gonna do it again?
No.
No, you did.
One 20-minute match that I got on tape unless someone offers me a bunch of money, hey, at that Royal Rumble, I'm ready for the Rumble if somebody's asking. But as far as me doing independent dates, no, I think I can spend my time doing stand-up, and my wife will be happy that I won't break my clavicle.
Now, when you were doing this, what was your family's response? So you're crazy.
Yeah, pretty much. You're crazy, but they already know I'm crazy. My wife knows I'm crazy. My wife knows, like, once I say, hey, I'm doing this, there's no talking me out of it.
Did anybody try to talk you out of it?
My manager tried to talk me out of it.
Of
She
course.
was like,
he saw his money tree going down.
yeah, like, if you break your neck, you supposed to be on set in a couple weeks, so we can't have you break anything. So she tried to talk me out of it, but again, there's not much. I don't do things just for money. You know, I like to, especially now that I do what I love and I do stand up and I get to act. I like to do things because I truly love and enjoy them, and there was no talking me out of it once it got going. And I got so much positive reaction and so much positive feedback from the other wrestlers on the show, and the only negative I got, of course, was from some of the people online, and it was like, oh, this is just like stand-up. The only people who talk shit are the people not doing anything.
That's exactly right. You said a good friend of mine, Too Cold, gave you a great compliment right after the match.
Yeah. Too Cold. He came up to me after the match. I was trying to stay away from everybody, even though I'm a big fan, starstruck by him, but I didn't want to. I was focused, first of all, and nervous, which I love because, you know, I've been doing stand-up so long that sometimes I'm not nervous before I go up, but I was nervous the whole day before that match and wanted to make sure I didn't mess up. And then after the match, Too Cold came up to me and he was like, hey, I don't know who you are. They told me you're not a wrestler. They told me you're some type of comedian. He's like, I don't know what you do, but I can tell you, you're definitely an entertainer. And that was coming from someone who grew up watching Too Cold Scorpio, grew up watching Flash Funk, that ended my night perfectly.
Well, you know, the whole key is, do you leave the people on their feet? And you left the people on their feet. Now you had some people dancing with you that were good dancers. You know, you had help, but you left the people on their feet, and that's the measure of everything. You know, some people get into so much about the work rate was this, the work rate was that. The work rate, if they're on their feet, the work rate was awesome.
Yeah. Well, I knew what I can bring and what I couldn't bring. I couldn't bring someone who knew how to throw the perfect arm drag or to counter every hold, but I know how to think out a story. And so just putting together that match, I don't want to ruin it for people who might want to see it. It's on my YouTube if anybody wants to check it out. But just putting together like the portrayals, the this, the that, everything that was going to happen, how he was going to take me for granted and allow me to blow up and take advantage of the fact that he was underestimating me. All these things were, you know, things that I thought about, and Tony and I talked back and forth for a couple of weeks, and that's where I knew I could bring something, in that, like, I was like, I know how to at least tell a story.
And that's the important thing that we preach all the time. No matter your level, tell a story out there, and it'll get over if you stay consistent with it. I got a question. You know, you've been introducing some of the biggest comedy clubs in the entire world, and you get the applause. You get this feeling when you go on stage. But that night, when you got the introduction of your first pro wrestling match, how did that feel walking out into that stadium, that arena that night, and getting into the ring? What kind of feeling was it similar to one of your star performances on the comedy scene, or how was it?
It was most similar to the first time I ever did comedy. First time I did comedy, I did an open mic in Portland, Oregon, and I talked about probably like 5 minutes about man boobs and other things, and just bad jokes probably that weren't good, but people laughed, and it gave me a high that I had been chasing ever since then. I remember clear as day that I had parked my car 1 block from the comedy club. I knew exactly where it was parked, but after I did that set, I was on such a high, I couldn't find my car for a half an hour. I had no idea where it was. I was like, I know it's on this block. I know that. And then I just remember at some point I go, I don't care if I ever find it. I don't care if I ever find it.
I'm enjoying this walk.
Yeah, I know what I want to do with my life is the feeling that I had. And the rest of the shows and doing shows after that was like, okay, now you really have to do work, and this isn't as easy as you think it's going to be. But doing the first time when I got introduced and I was coming out and people were on board, it was that same type of feeling. I've only had it 2 or 3 times. When I one time I opened for Dave Chappelle at like this 20,000 people theater, and nobody wanted to see me. Everybody wanted to see Dave Chappelle, but by my 3rd minute in, I got them on my side. So by the time I was done, like, no, to get them to forget about Dave for a few minutes was another time where I got that same high. And then the only other time I can say was when I did that wrestling match.
Mr. Briscoe and I, after several hundred nights, have not found our car either.
And it wasn't from the ring high either.
No.
That might have been good. Yeah, that
We were high,
worked out better.
And a lot of times it was right out the door of a hotel room, you couldn't see that far.
Yeah, I've had a few of those as well.
Did you ever watch, being a comedian and love wrestling, the Andy Kaufman stuff?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
What did you think about Andy Kaufman? I thought it was just fantastic. I mean, he was one of the hottest names in the South at the time. What did you think?
I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved it. That's some of the stuff that I go back and research when I was getting ready to do my match, was just a way to keep it realistic and keep it like, hey, I know I'm a comedian. I'm not going to come here and be like, I'm the biggest wrestler and you're going down. I'm gonna be like, hey, I'm a comedian. I know I'm a comedian, but what happens if you lose to me? Then you're a big fucking joke, And so it was looking at his stuff and how seriously that he took it, and just good. I mean, I know, because you couldn't really redo any of those bits today, but just him wrestling a 250-pound woman that at a pool, and it still makes me laugh. It's such a funny bit to me.
Yeah, it's just amazing the stuff that Kaufman did. None of it could be done today.
No.
But one thing that was, Kaufman never cashed a check. According to Jerry Jarrett, he never cashed a check. He just did it because he loved it. He just wanted to come down, and he called and he wanted to do it, and he loved every second of it.
Oh, well, we're the same in that way, because I never got paid for any of it either. I never checked in. I go like, whatever you offer me, I'm sure is going to only make me feel insulted for the night. So.
That's a good charge, right?
So what do you like best? You do voiceovers, you do movies, you do stand-up. What is it that excites you the most, or is it all of it?
It's all of it. It really is all of it. I just like not being bored. I like new experiences. I like doing things that I never thought I would do. Like I hosted a spinoff of the Chopped series. That's like a tentpole series, and I got to host a spinoff of it where people were cooking with weed, and I was like, I can't believe this is my life. I am the host of a cooking show. I can't even cook. I can't cook worth shit at all. And just doing the voiceover stuff. Like I grew up watching this show called Rugrats, and now I'm like in the reboot of Rugrats, and things like that make me excited. But if you're going to ask me to choose an order, I love stand-up the most because it's the most immediate. It gives me the reaction right away. It often, at least for me, it pays the least of the 3. So, but it's also the only one I would do for free. I wouldn't act or do voiceovers for free. Not at all.
I saw the response that you said the Rock is a man's Beyonce. Mm-hmm. I thought that was so good, and Rock's response was awesome.
Oh man, no, I really appreciated that so much. The fact that he even took the time to respond. He gave me a lot. He did it like the week that the special came out, called Giggle Fit. If people want to check it out, it's on Paramount Plus. And I had that joke about The Rock I've been doing for a while, and it's just how I feel. I feel like he's one of the best human beings we've ever seen. Who else has a production company with his ex-wife? I hate my ex-wife.
I don't blame
you. And so I just think he's one of the coolest dudes ever. And so I did that joke. He retweeted about it, and it got me more promotion than anything. I mean, than Comedy Central did at all. So it was the best.
When he went out one time, Kevin Nash was sitting in the back, and he said, "That's the only guy who looks better than his video game." You're right. The guy looks like an Avenger. And you know what's amazing? No one dislikes The Rock. As successful as he's been, everybody's like, oh, we all love The Rock. You know, most of the time when a guy gets that successful, he has a huge group of haters just because he's so successful. Nobody dislikes him.
No, because he's chill. He doesn't hide where he came from. Everybody knows the $7 story. And he gives. Everybody knows that he buy trucks for people. He's helpful for people. I mean, you can't hate The Rock. If you hate The Rock, you're a horrible person.
Now,
we had Downtown Bruno on our show not long ago, and he went over the night that he received his free truck from Rock. I mean, even telling it on our show, it brought him to tears. It meant that much to him.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, it's just the thought with him, right? Because it's money. He's got the money, but it's the remembering of people who helped you when they didn't need to. It's like the rules of entertainment. It's the things that I live by, and it's what stand up is like. Hey, I try to, when I bring people on the road with me, I pay their hotel, I pay their food, I make sure that they don't have to come out of pocket for anything, because I know they're not making money like I'm making money on these shows, and because that's what the right people did for me. And when you see a lot of people who don't do that anymore, and I love someone who follows the rules. Not that everybody who's just a blind follower, but someone who follows the rules of being a gentleman and being an artist in any industry is something I really respect, and way too few people do it.
We're like, in our business, we have a lot of traditions. Like we mentioned the one shaking hands before, but there's a lot of, and as comedians, do you guys have that same fraternity? Like, where there's certain things you need to do.
Yeah, there's certainly, I mean, there isn't a thing like shaking hands or anything of that nature, but it's just more like real comedians know other real comedians, and real comedians know when people are just visiting our business and coming in to make a check for a little bit, and then they're going to leave, and we don't really embrace them, But as far as other comedians, there's people who they go on and they go and do movies and they become multimillionaires, but they're still comedians. Like Amy Schumer is still just a comedian. She still can get along with just about anybody, whether they're an open micer or a doorman or Chris Rock, Sarah Silverman, people who are just in the craft. And that's one of the reasons why I'll never stop doing stand-up, even as my acting and voiceover careers get better and take off for me. Is I never want to disconnect myself from this of just being funny and being able to go up there without a net and just be myself and be funny that way. I think everything else I've ever gotten has come from that. So I love being stand-up.
Ron, is there you're talking voiceover, the voiceovers you're doing a character. Do you do improv voiceovers? Do you do any wrestlers' voices or any promos that you can share?
No, that's actually one of the weirdest part of my career, is that I do so many voiceovers. I'm a Cooper in the Trolls franchise. I'm King Shark and Harley Quinn. I got a new couple movies and new show on Nickelodeon coming out, and they're all the same voice. It's all just my voice because that's what I'm good at. Like I've met some
money.
Yeah, I've met people who can do all of that. Like this guy named Eric Bozza. He is like Bugs Bunny. He's the chipmunk. He does every voice because he can do all the dialects. He can switch his voice into different things. Or like Dan Soder, who's like an excellent macho man and does. But I learned very early, especially the way I talk. I have a little bit of a lisp. I have a little bit of a sing-songy thing. I don't sound like anybody but me. So I had to embrace being me. So
You're like John Wayne. No matter what John Wayne played, he was John Wayne. I don't care what it was. He was when he was the quiet man in Irish, but he was still John Wayne.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
man,
well,
you just got
I'll take
compared
that.
to John Wayne. You just got compared to John Wayne.
I know. I'll take that.
That's right. You're the Duke.
The Duke of comedy.
we had Pete Rose come in one time. Talking about guys coming in showing respect, and Pete Rose got up. He's back in the Hall of Fame, and when he got out in front of some interviewer, he was telling him, he goes, you know, it must have been like if these guys came into our dressing room and were listening to Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth. And the way he said it was so freaking cool. From that point forward, Pete Rose could have got anything you wanted in the wrestling business. Dude, we've never been put over like that. That was the man with 4,000 hits just said that about us. But it's so cool when someone comes in, like you talk about Piper, you know, comes into your business. It's so cool when somebody comes into your business and has a lot of respect for it. Like you came into wrestling and had a lot of respect for it. You know, people just admire that.
Yeah, I think that's just the way you gotta be in life. If you don't respect it, why go do it? And don't go do something just because it's in the zeitgeist or it's hot or it's going to get your name out there. People can read that a mile away, you know, and especially as a wrestling fan myself, you could always tell. I remember, maybe because I knew them, but when like Michael Shea and Colin Jost was in the Royal Rumble, and I was like, them motherfuckers don't watch no wrestling.
That's great.
We feel the same way.
Yeah.
But get your checks, brothers. Get your checks.
I was helping somebody one day. I was doing commentary with Michael Cole, and I forget who it was, but I tell him something. I'm trying to help him, you know, kind of how our commentary works. It's a little bit different. I'm just trying to be helpful. And he looks at me and goes, I hosted SNL. All right, pal. You're on your own. This is going to get interesting. And it did.
Yeah. No, again, I think that for me, the respect factor, it's from pro wrestling because I love it. But in general, it also comes from the fact that I don't follow things. I don't know actors. Sometimes I don't know if I'm in a room with someone who's really powerful. So I just try to treat everybody like they are, especially once I started acting and getting on set. I just started assuming, I'm like, hey, I know how hard I work to get here. So I'm just going to assume anybody else that's in this area worked just as hard to get here too. It might not be the case. They might have been handed it. I don't know, but I'm going to assume because I bust my ass to get here, you did too. So I should give you that level of respect, especially if I'm your house, you know. Why would I come to your house and tell you I know how to do this job already, you know?
Ron, I know you got this question after your wrestling match, but you know, you're out in a club somewhere. Hey, Ron, is that wrestling fake? You don't ever get that question.
The face.
How many times do you get that question? You don't respond the same way Layfield knocked.
I get it from some. I mean, you know what I really usually get from all these comedians is they're just shocked. They were like, "Oh, I wish I could do that." That's the thing that I got the most from people, whether they were comedians, whether it was just some guy in the crowd, when it's not like some online hating or anything like that, when it's just an individual person, they just go, man, I can't believe you had the balls to do that. I wish I could do that. And that to me is all I need. Cause you know, I'll take that leap. Cause I could have sucked. I could have ate bullshit, but either way, I would have had a match. That's all that matters.
I saw you on the Joe Rogan podcast. You said you thought about even going to clown school. Were you serious about going to clown school?
I thought about it. I didn't do it.
So how long is clown school? Did you check into it?
I have a friend who went to clown school. Yeah, did some clowning. It's pretty long. I think it's like at least a few months that you got to go do it. I know a few clowns. It's not hard to find clowns. I do too. I
work with one everywhere you go.
Yeah.
That's not nice, Mr. Briscoe. That's just not nice. So, hey, speaking of hard work, when you lost all that weight, was there a point where you decided I'm going to lose all this weight? And how hard was it? What was the process? Because I mean, you lost a ton of weight.
Yeah, I lost about 140 pounds total. And basically, it was a two-factor situation. I was just always husky, as we talked about before, but it was kind of counterbalanced by the fact that I did not have much money. So I couldn't really afford to like truly overeat. But then I got my first job on a sitcom and I had a bunch of money and I could order Postmates and all these food things at midnight anytime I wanted. And I blew up to like 360 pounds at my heaviest, about 363. And my mom was concerned about me, and that was really, my mom had a conversation with me where she was just like, I don't like buying you clothes this size. It makes me scared. It makes me scared that that I'll lose you before I pass. And that's the last thing any parent wants. And her saying that to me kind of woke me up. And then when the show came out and I was forced to see myself on screen, be like, oh, that's what I look like. It was the first time where I was like, oh, I don't like that. And so it was a combination of my mom and me being actually forced to look in the mirror where I was like, you know what? Let's fix this. And I was lucky enough to meet a great trainer named Jorgen, who I work with to this day. We worked with him this afternoon. And we just been at it. It's a lifestyle now. I'll never stop working out. I'll never stop training. And just keep trying to work on my nutrition.
Did you get that singlet? Did you get that singlet from Kurt Angle?
I pandered after it. Yeah. I certainly do.
You're kind of similar. You kind of resemble Kurt in that.
Yeah, I just had to pull it down. Let him know it's time.
Ron, I was sitting at the Cleveland Airport Marriott one time with Big Van Vader. And it's about 2:00 in the morning. Bar's about to close. We're both about 20 beers in. He had just ordered a pizza. And he's sitting there having a pizza, 2:00 in the morning. We've had all these beers. And he looks over at me. He goes, you lost weight, kid? And I said, yeah. I said, I have lost some weight. He goes, I don't know why I can't lose weight. I have no idea, Leon.
Yeah, it is that simple sometimes. It is that simple. Just like, if I just stop eating at 1 a.m, things will get better. Well,
you know, that's how it happens, sir. You don't realize it, but that 1 o'clock, you know, you work all night, get to the hotel room, there's nothing to open except room service, and all of a sudden you order double hamburgers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Double fries, double burgers.
Yeah, I had to learn to it really is a lot of good life lessons for me. It's just all about learning to be more self-reliant, to come in prepared, and so I don't end up in these situations where it's 1 a.m. and I'm starving and I'm on the road. Now I just pack a lot of protein shakes with me wherever I go. If there's a few places I know where I can get what I want health wise, and if all hell breaks loose, there's a plastic shaker in my bag with some protein powder, so I can always figure it out. And I think that's been the best case. It's just being prepared. Because when you're doing stand-up, when you're doing any of these jobs where you're in charge of yourself, that's really where I think you can make the difference between if you really want to be successful and really want to make it in your chosen craft. And I remember when I started getting healthy and I went to one of these industry parties doing this festival, and I noticed you see every comedian at the bar at midnight, but you'd only see the real rich comedians at the gym the next morning at 7 a.m. And I was like, I want to be one of these rich comedians.
I want to be that gym.
But that's sometimes that's kind of hard because like you do stand-up comedy, which I've never done, but I've done the wrestling, and you have a late match, and you get all psyched up for it. You leave, and the crowd's all happy, and then you come back to the hotel room, and you go, "Okay, I'm wide awake," and you got nothing to do. It's hard to wind down sometimes. I think that's why a lot of times on the road, and boredom. I think that's why a lot of guys end up with very bad habits.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You certainly can. I think, but that's why I like to my friends. And so we're going to always hang out together after the shows. We know what we're going to do. We're going to hang out together. We're going to smoke a little bit of weed. Hopefully that'll get me back to sleep before 3 a.m. And then I got the right friends. So then if I go, hey, let's go get double cheeseburgers, they'll be like, Ron, I don't know, you really don't want to do that. And I'm like, all right, yeah, let's just go back to the hotel room and play some video games.
I know it's very difficult to get the weight off of it. Which is more difficult, getting it off of it or keeping it off of it?
Keeping it off, of course, especially when the pandemic was happening, and I was like, oh man, I don't want to die with a salad in my belly. Getting back in order, but I think in a lot of ways the exercising and keeping my schedule helped keep my mindset in the pandemic. It helps me keep my mind in general, because again, I have such a free lifestyle. I don't have to really do anything, but I have to keeping myself on a schedule, having my newborn son, like having things that keep pressure on me are very helpful for me.
What are the big projects that you have now? Do you have something coming up that you're looking forward to the most? Or
yes, couple things. Thank you for asking. I'm ready to go on tour, which I'm excited about. I'm going to
I saw your tour list. You got like tons of dates.
Good dates, good theaters. I'm just happy about that. Trying to move up from these clubs into these theaters. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm going to do a little East Coast swing, DC, Philly, New York, and some other place that I surely have forgotten. Boston. That was it. But I'm going a lot of places. People can check it out at ronfunches.com if they want to. That's what my summer is. And then I have a new show coming out on Apple TV Plus called Loot with Maya Rudolph, who's legendary SNL performer and from Bridesmaids, and I play her cousin, and she plays a recently divorced richest woman in the world. She was dating or married to a Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk type. They get divorced, and then she has to find her own way in the world as a multi-billionaire, and I'm a cousin who she has not seen in a while. Will I try to take advantage of her? Who knows?
I loved Mojo Rawley, the wrestler. When Bill Gates got a divorce, he told his ex-wife, hey, I'm available.
Yeah, I saw that.
He is so funny. He is such a funny guy.
Yeah.
I know you're not gonna get back in the ring, or at least you say you're not. Are you got anything else coming up for wrestling? You hosted partly hosted the roast on with Bruce Pritchard, and unfortunately Bruce lived through it. Me and Jerry are very sad about it. We're very sad about that. We're his only two friends in the world, by the way. Bruce has two friends. It's us. We're his only friends. Have you got anything else coming up? Have you got anything else coming up in the wrestling world? Are you looking forward to doing something?
Yeah, actually, I do. I'm doing a podcast for Spotify. I'm not exactly sure what the format's going to be yet. We're really trying to figure it out. I want it to be a little bit funny, a little bit different from all these wrestling podcasts that have been coming out. But we're hammering out the details on the creative of that. But people can probably plan to see that in the next month or so. So I'm going to have my own wrestling podcast.
It's awesome. Freddie Prince is starting up his own wrestling league out there. You never know. You might have to bring the trunks and boots back out.
I'll talk to him. I love him. He's a very nice guy. He actually came on I have another podcast where we just talk art and getting better at life. He came on that podcast, and we just ended up talking about wrestling all day on that one. So I'm gonna probably try to get him on my wrestling podcast as well.
Did you ever look at Freddie Prinze Sr., his old stand-up stuff? I mean, he was the hottest guy in the country in their mid-70s.
Yeah, no, I remember watching the documentary about him and just seeing just how big of a star. I never really knew how big of a star he was. I knew how big of a star Freddie Prinze Jr. was, but I never knew how big of a star his dad was, and just how much like a candle in the wind it was. It was so quick. He was big star so fast, and then he was gone so fast. But he was definitely, I mean, I could see why he was handsome and charming as shit, so I get it.
Yeah. Well, Ron, I can't thank you enough. Well, Jerry said that he had got you somehow on our podcast. I said that's wonderful. So now I'm gonna keep Jerry as my friend for another week.
Oh yeah, it's people. It's not as hard to get me as some people. Oh, I get it is difficult to get me if I don't respect you. It's almost impossible to get me if I don't respect you. But I respect Mr. Briscoe very much from afar, and then by meeting him in person, that respect only grew. So anything that you ask me to do, I'm happy to be there anytime.
Would you put me over, Ron?
Oh, wow!
In the ring.
Yes.
Where your arm dragged me.
I don't think anybody would fathom that I could defeat you in the ring at all, no matter what your age is. No, if you want to hook me, I'll be hooked, sir.
Hey, tap like you made it.
Tap like you made it.
Ron, thank you so much for your time, man. We know you're so busy. It's a thrill for John to have someone like you on here. And man, everybody listen to us out there, check his wrestling out. You got a YouTube channel? Tell us.
Yep, just check it out, Ron Funches for the YouTube, ronfunches.com for all the tour dates. And then again, just the logo on Apple TV Plus coming out June 24th. If you check out those things, I'll be very happy.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome.